kinds of plants and animals. However, there are other living organisms around us which we normally cannot see with our naked eye, but can observe them through a microscope. In fact, 300 years ago, Antony van Leeuwenhoek has discovered the world of living creatures that are present everywhere. He carefully drew and studied everything he saw, like bacteria, fungi, and many other tiny creatures. So, microbes are exploited by people in biotechnology, both in traditional food, beverage preparations, and in modern technologies based on genetic engineering. So, in this chapter, we'll be studying about microorganisms and their uses and how they are against the human life. Microorganisms are the living organisms that cannot be seen with the naked eye and can only be observed with the help of a microscope. So these are called microorganisms or microbes. After the invention of the microscope, it was found that microorganisms are present everywhere. In fact, they make up nearly half of the total weight of all the living organisms present on the earth. Some of them are useful to us in many ways, while some are definitely harmful since they cause various infections. So, the ones which cause infection are called the pathogens. So, the microorganisms which causes infections are called pathogens. And the branch of science that deals with the study of microorganisms is called microbiology. So, the branch of science that deals with the study of microbes is called microbiology. There is a certain classification of microorganisms. So, these can be grouped as bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and algae. And there is a other group which is called the viruses. So now let us study about viruses. Viruses are also microscopic, but they are different from the other microorganisms. They can only multiply itself in the cells of living organisms, that is in the host, which may be a bacterium, plant, or an animal. Therefore, they are also called the obligate parasites. That is, they cannot live outside the body of the host. They will definitely require a host for their survival. Some of the common examples will include the common cold, influenza, which are caused by viruses, and some others like the AIDS, polio, chicken pox, etc. are also caused due to viruses. Now we'll study where do the microorganisms live? What is their habitat? So microorganisms are omnipresent. That is, these are the microorganisms are found all around the world in all the types of habitats, that is in the air, water, soil, on the plants, inside the human bodies, inside animals' bodies, and also inside the bodies of even at high temperatures or very cold places. They can survive in extremely harsh environmental conditions like hot springs, saline water, ice cold water, sandy soil, marshy lands, etc. And they are also found at the bottom of oceans and seas. And some microorganisms grow on other organisms, that is bacteriophage. One such example is a bacteriophage, that which lives on a bacteria. The virus which lives on a bacteria is called bacteriophage, while some others exist freely. So microorganisms like amoeba can live alone, while fungi and bacteria may live in colonies. So amoeba may live alone, but fungi and bacteria live in colonies. And bacteria have lived on earth for much longer duration than the human beings. They were even before the humans were there on earth. And they are very tough organisms which can survive under extreme environmental conditions. Bacteria can survive under extreme environmental conditions. And they are found in varied environmental conditions such as the boiling mud pots, extremely cold icy waters, lakes of caustic soda, and pools of concentrated sulfuric acid. They can survive at several kilometers down the oceans, or they can probably survive in space too. So, a kind of bacterium was recovered from a camera which stood on the moon for 2 years. So, there is probably no environment in which bacteria cannot survive. However, there are certain chemical methods to check their growth. So, bacteria is a very tough organism. It can survive in almost everywhere. Now, microorganisms play an important role in our life. So, some of them are beneficial whereas some are harmful to us. So, microorganisms can either be friendly for our survival or can be harmful. Friendly in the sense they can be used in the food production, commercially used in the production of alcohol, used in vaccines, used for increasing the soil fertility. While those which are harmful, that means they can cause infections and microorganisms can cause food poisoning. Now let us study in detail about friendly microorganisms. So the first importance is in their food production. So various kinds of microorganisms are used in the formation of different types of food products such as curd, bread, cake, etc. So first we'll study about the preparation of curd. So milk contains various microorganisms. So all these, the bacteria that is lactobacillus, promotes the formation of curd. It converts the lactose, that is a milk sugar of the milk, into lactic acid by precipitating and partially digesting the protein. For curd formation, a small amount of curd is added to lukewarm milk. Lukewarm milk provides favorable conditions for the growth of bacteria, where the lactobacillus multiplies and converts it into curd. Bacteria can also be used in making of cheese, yogurt, vinegar, pickles, and many other food items. Next, it has its use in the baking industry. So, yeast is used in the preparation of breads, cakes, and many more. And for making these, the bread flour, either atta or maida, is first mixed with some sugar and warm water, and after that, a small amount of yeast powder is added to it. So, mixture is needed to make a soft dough. So, yeast multiplies rapidly and produces CO2, carbon dioxide, during respiration. So, the bubbles of the gas fill the dough and increase its volume, and the mixture is used in the baking industry. Next, we have the other use of microorganisms in the as a commercial products. So it is involved in the production of alcohol and wine. So yeast is also used for commercial production of alcohol, acetic acid, which is vinegar, and wine. For this purpose, yeast is grown on natural sugars. Yeast is grown on natural sugars present in grains like barley, wheat, rice, crushed fruit juices. So the process of anaerobic conversion of sugar into alcohol in the presence of microorganism like yeast is called fermentation. So the conversion or the process of anaerobic conversion of sugar into alcohol in the presence of a microbe like yeast is called fermentation. So the common species of yeast which is used for the process of fermentation is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. So the procedure of fermentation can be easily observed by adding 2 to 3 teaspoons of sugar in about 500 ml of water with a half spoon of yeast powder in a solution. The solution kept in warm area for about 4 to 5 hours gives a smell of alcohol, that is ethyl alcohol. This is how you prepare alcohols. Next, their use is also there in the medicinal field. The use of microorganisms in medicinal field. So microorganisms are the source of various kinds of medicines, usually the antibiotics. So antibiotics kill or stop the growth of the infection causing microorganisms. So these days a number of antibiotics are being produced from bacteria and fungi like streptomycin, tetracycline, erythromycin and many more. And these are some of the most commonly known antibiotics which are used for the treatment of a number of infections. The antibiotics that are manufactured by using specific microorganisms and are used to cure a variety of infections. They are even mixed with the feed of livestock and poultry to check the microbial infection in the animals. And they are also used to control many plant infections. The next friendly use of the microorganisms is in vaccines production. So when an infection causing microbe enters in our body, the body produces antibodies. So our body will produce antibodies against the microbes to fight the invader. This is called active immunity of our body. And the body also remembers how to fight to the microbes if it enters again. So this is our body. And some microbe will enter. For the first time, our body will actually produce antibodies to fight against this microbe. And then when the microbe will enter our body for the second time, our body remembers the previously produced antibodies, so the action will be more quicker than the first response. Vaccines work on the same principle. So a vaccine is a preparation or a suspension or extract of a dead or a weakened infection causing microorganism, which on injection into an healthy person will promote their immunity. So for the very first time, we ourselves are actually sending an weakened microbe into our body so that our body will release the antibodies. So when the second time, when the original microbe will enter into our body will have a more quicker response. This is because suitable antibodies are produced against it by our immune system already. So the antibodies or antibody preparing cells remain in the body and protect it from the same infection causing microbe. So this is called the mode of action of vaccine, that is, it provokes the antibody formation. So the formation prevents many other infections like cholera, tuberculosis, smallpox, hepatitis, etc. A worldwide campaign against smallpox has finally led to its eradication from most parts of the world. So these days, a similar campaign against polio is also being done using the Plus Polio program. So in the present time, various kinds of vaccines are made on a large scale from the microorganisms to protect humans and other animals from several infections. So the next use of microorganisms is in increasing the soil fertility. They also help in increasing the soil fertility. Some bacteria like the rhizobium, blue-green algae, Anabaena are able to fix the atmospheric nitrogen to enrich the soil with nitrogen, which increases its fertility. So these microbes are commonly called the biological nitrogen fixers. They are called the biological nitrogen fixers. Next use is in cleaning up the environment. The next use of the microorganisms is cleaning up the environment. Some friendly microorganisms like the fermentative microbes, the denitrifying microbes, etc., are used to treat the organic waste like vegetable peels, remains of the animals which are dead, which break them into simple and usable substances. They are again used by the plants and animals. So the manure is formed by the decomposition of organic wastes into simpler forms, which can be used by the plants, which we already studied in the previous chapter. So these microorganisms can be used to degrade the harmful substances which are biodegradable and thereby clean up the environment. Now we will move on to the harmful microorganisms. So microorganisms are harmful in many ways. Some of the microorganisms cause infections to human beings, plants and animals. Such infection causing microorganisms, as we already know, are called the pathogens. Some of the organisms spoil the food, the clothing and leather. So first we'll speak about the infection causing microorganisms in humans. So the microbial infections which spread from an infected person to the healthy person through air, water, food or physical contact are called the communicable infections, communicable diseases. For example, the cholera, common cold, chickenpox, tuberculosis and many more. But some infections remain restricted to the infected person and do not spread to the other individual through normal contacts. Those are called the non-communicable. So the ones which can be transferred from the infected person to the healthy are called communicable, while those which will not be transferred are called the non-communicable. For example, we can have the cancer, night blindness and many more. So there are some infections, insects and animals which help in the transmission of these pathogens from one person to another. So they are called the carriers. So they will aid in the transfer of infections from one person to another. Some of them are like housefly and cockroach are the common carriers which sit on the garbage, etc. or the waste products and carry the pathogens to the eatables. So these carriers are also called the vectors. They are also called vectors. So the pathogen completes some part of their life cycle in vectors without causing any infection to them. One such example is malaria. So malaria has a vector which is the female Anopheles mosquito, which has both the pathogen which is the plasmodium. It will complete its life cycle both in the female Anopheles plus the human body. The pathogen which is called plasmodium will do that, which causes malaria in human beings. Here the sexual reproduction will happen in the female Anopheles mosquito. So next we'll speak about the infection causing microorganisms in animals. Several microorganisms not only cause infections in humans and plants but also in other animals. For example, anthrax is a dangerous human and cattle infection caused by bacterium. And foot and mouth infections of cattle is caused by virus. And some of the microbes also infect the plants. So they can cause infections to plants like wheat, rice, potato, sugarcane, orange, apple, etc. So these infections reduce the yield of the crops. They can be controlled by the use of certain chemicals which kill the microbes. Now we will study about food poisoning. Food poisoning could be due to the consumption of food spoiled by some microorganisms. So, in case the food is not preserved properly, then the microorganisms grow on it and they release the toxins leading to food poisoning. So, the toxins released are absorbed into the blood and from the digestive tract. They are absorbed into the blood. They cause the gastrointestinal trouble and other effects like nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. So, the bacteria which causes food poisoning will involve the salmonella, while the fungi which causes the food poisoning is aspergillus or penicillium. So, to avoid food poisoning, we can follow the food preservation, the proper food preservation. So, microorganisms spoil our food. So, spoiled food emits bad smell, has a bad taste, and changed color. So, as microorganisms are present everywhere, it becomes our duty to protect our food from them, especially for the sake of our health. So, in case we do not do so, we may fall sick and suffer from food poisoning and many other serious illnesses. Some of the methods of food preservation include the chemical method. That is, the chemical preservatives are commonly used to preserve food materials. Some of the most popular are vinegar, sodium benzoate, and many more. These are used in jams, jellies, sauces. And the second method is by common salt. Common salt has been used to preserve meat and fish for ages. Meat and fish are covered with dry salt to check the growth of bacteria. Salting is also used to preserve amla, raw mangoes, and many more. Next step is by sugar. Jams, jellies, squashes are preserved by sugar. Sugar reduces the moisture content, which inhibits the growth of bacteria that spoil the food. Next step is pasteurization. So, in this method is invented by Louis Pasteur in 1862 for the preservation of milk. As we know, milk gets contaminated very easily by the action of microorganisms. To prevent this, milk is heated around 70 degrees Celsius for 15 to 30 seconds and then suddenly chilled and stored. So, this process is called pasteurization. So, the next method is by oil or vinegar. By oil or vinegar. So, use of oil and vinegar prevents the spoilage of pickles because bacteria cannot live in such an environment. Next, it can also be stored by refrigeration or cold treatment. So, it is very effective method of preservation. So, the growth of microbes is retarded at low temperatures. So, the temperature inside the refrigerator helps to preserve the food for a long duration. Next is the storage and proper packing of food items. So, these days, dry fruits and even vegetables are sold in sealed airtight packets to prevent the attack of microbes. Next, with this, we've understood the food preservation methods. Now, we'll understand what is nitrogen fixation. Rhizobium, which lives in the root nodules. Rhizobium is a bacteria which lives in the root nodules of many leguminous plants such as beans, and many more. So, the bacterium Rhizobium will take the nitrogen from the atmosphere and fixes on the roots of the plants. So, plants give shelter to the Rhizobium and thus they both help one another. So, this relationship is known as symbiosis. Sometimes nitrogen gets fixed through the action of lightning as well. Now, we'll understand the nitrogen cycle. Our atmosphere by volume has 78% of nitrogen gas. So, nitrogen is one of the most essential constituents of all the living organisms as it is a part of proteins, chlorophyll, nucleic acid, and vitamins. So, the atmospheric nitrogen cannot be directly taken by plants or animals. So, certain bacteria like the rhizobium, we have already studied about rhizobium, and the cyanobacterium, that is Nostoc and Albina, present in the soil, fix the nitrogen from the atmosphere into compounds of nitrogen, that is ammonia, nitrites, and nitrates. So, once the nitrogen is concentrated or converted into biologically usable compounds, it can be produced or absorbed by the plants from the soil through their root system. So, when plants and animals will die, the bacteria and fungi present in the soil convert these nitrogenous wastes into nitrogenous compounds to be used by the plants again. Certain other bacteria convert some part of this nitrogenous compounds into nitrogen gas, which again goes back into the atmosphere. As a result, the percentage of nitrogen in the atmosphere remains more or less constant. So now we'll study about the cycle in a much detailed manner. So first we have the atmospheric nitrogen. So this nitrogen is being fixed by bacteria and blue green algae, and it will also be fixed by lightning. So then the bacteria will fix the nitrogen into nitrogenous compounds like nitrites, nitrates, and many more. And then these compounds of nitrogen will go into the soil. So when they are in the soil, they will be obtained, or the uptake will be taken by the plants, and these plants will be consumed by animals. And again, the animals, that is the nitrogenous waste from excretion or after their death, will again replenish into the soil. So then this bacteria will turn the compounds of nitrogen into gaseous nitrogen from the soil, and then they'll be again replenished as atmospheric nitrogen. So with this we can understand that the percentage of nitrogen in the atmosphere remains more or less constant, because there is a proper cycle in the utilization of nitrogen. So once it is taken, it is also replenished in the same rate. With this we understood the nitrogen cycle.